Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey, and as always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How you doing today on this beautiful and surprisingly chilly Friday evening? How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Always good.
Anxious for the show.
Yeah, no, we got a great show planned. We got a lot of football planned. Obviously, we're going to recap yesterday's game. We also got some NBA news. We talked about this particular news a few months back. It didn't make a lot of sense at the time, but it seems like we finally have an answer to our questions. But let's jump into last night's game. So the Philadelphia Eagles were able to take down the Minnesota Vikings 34-28. The Vikings had four fumbles lost. However, it was a primetime game, and it wasn't necessarily Kirk Cousins' fault. He had over 300 yards passing, he had, I think, almost 370 yards passing, and 4 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts did not have a bad game. But I want to know, what was your reaction to the second annual Thursday night primetime game on Prime Video?
I didn't think it was that close a game, actually. I mean, the Eagles got ahead. They were ahead 27-7 at pretty middle of the third quarter, getting late into the third quarter. They played prevent defense, ran time off the clock. Vikings managed to score a touchdown with about a minute left to make it 34-28. And, that they ain't got nobody. The onside kicks work like once in a blue moon. So I didn't think it was that close a game, really. And I didn't think the Vikings were going to be that good this year, and they're proving it. They're 0-2.
Right. I'll say this. While I did expect them to take a step back, and I said that, the chances of them going 11-0 in one-score games is not going to happen. It's very unlikely, if not impossible. I didn't expect them to go 0-2 to start the year in one-score games. I actually thought this was just a surprisingly close game, at least, based on what we saw even to open up the year. I mean, this Vikings team lost to Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield was basically, scraps to the Buccaneers. They were desperate for a quarterback, and they thought, why not Baker? He might give us a little bit of juice, a little bit of life, and so that they're starting to roll with him, and then we're going to make our picks later on, and I think I have an interesting take on the Baker Mayfield Buccaneers for this week. However, what I didn't expect is for the Vikings to start off by having the second highest amount of fumbles to begin the year. I believe the first one is the 0-3 Rams. Then it's this year's Vikings tied with like the 0-2 Steelers or something like that. So I didn't expect the Vikings to literally have fumble issues in the first two games, have 6 in the first two games. Now, week 1 against the Buccaneers, everyone could say that was Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins himself, I believe, had 4 turnovers in that game alone. This game, however, you can't really blame Kirk Cousins. He actually had a very, very good game. And in primetime games, that's not what Kirk Cousins does. I mean, Cousins had 364 yards and 4 touchdowns. He actually only held 2 sacks, which is pretty incredible because he got pressured on over a third of his dropbacks. But I'll say this, the Vikings offensive line, it was banged up, and I think I think it came out like a couple minutes before the show started that one of their offensive linemen is done for the year, which is pretty big. Christian Darrisaw was dealing with an injury on the strip sack that the Eagles had. Darrisaw's replacement, that's who got beat on that play. But the Vikings, once again, for the second game in a row, gave the ball up in key situations. I mean, they gave the ball up when the Eagles were on their own 7-yard line. They could just score, very easily. They're on the 7-yard line. That was a given. You also had a Justin Jefferson, touchback fumble out of the end zone. A lot of people hate that rule, but that's sort of, high risk, high reward. If you're going to reach for the goal line, you got to at least, contain the ball, and that's, what didn't happen. So, I mean, I'm shocked to see how bad and how, I guess unfortunate the Vikings have been playing, the amount of turnovers that they've had in 2 games. But I'll say this, the Eagles, I don't think they look as good as last year.
No.
I mean, I really think that there's some holes here. And when we make it to week 8 or 9, depending on when I want to do this, I think we're going to do it in week 9 when we do our final standings predictions. The Eagles probably won't be at the top of the NFC East for me.
Well, I think the Eagles ran into a tough defense last week. They were talking about, the Eagles need to bounce back on offense. They started slow this year. Well, they were playing against the Patriots. The Patriots have one of the best defenses in the league. and they showed it in the first game. And the Eagles had a very tough time with it. I think the Vikings have improved their defense. They brought in Brian Flores. He's a former Patriot defensive coordinator, a former Miami head coach, a former Steelers defensive coordinator. He's an experienced coach, and he's made the Vikings a lot better in a short period of time. So I think the Eagles ran into two. I think the Patriots are head and shoulders over the Vikings defense, but I do think the Vikings defense is better than it was last year, and I think it showed a little bit last night. But the Eagles did get out to a 27-7 lead.
Right. But here's the thing. I don't think the Vikings look much better. I mean, they couldn't stop anybody. I mean, they were getting cooked. I mean, they let up 34 points in this game. And honestly, truthfully, the Vikings were surprisingly in this game late. Now, if it wasn't for 4 turnovers, I think there's actually a pretty decent shot.
Yeah, the 4 turnovers. 7 turnovers in 2 games.
I think there's a pretty decent shot that the Vikings actually could come out and win, because I don't like the look of this Eagles team. They got slowed down by the Patriots. Hell, Patriots reserves were holding down a great front 7, so much so that it was based on literally one play, one drive for the Patriots that could have put them, 1-0 to start the year off. They couldn't get it done, but the Eagles could have fallen in week 1 to the Patriots. But I'll say this right now: this Eagles team, I don't think it's one of the. It's close to put it. I don't know if I'm going to put them in my top 3, because right now I don't love what I'm seeing. I mean, are they going to be better than the Chiefs when Travis Kelce coming back? I don't think so. Could they? I mean, what I saw from the Jaguars was extremely impressive so far. I mean, we saw what the San Francisco 49ers did to open up the year. They crushed Pittsburgh.
How about the Cowboys?
The Cowboys defense did a 40-0 win over the Giants.
Yeah.
So are they top 5? Maybe. Are they top 3 anymore? I don't know. Because I had the Bengals and the Eagles as the only 2 teams that could really, ruffle some of the Chiefs' feathers. I don't know if the Eagles still have that. And also, I'll say this. Overall, though, I mean, the Eagles, I still think, are trying to figure out who they are as a team. Are they a power run team? Or are they a drop back and pass first team? And I think that's going to be interesting to see how they develop, because they have a brand new OC, a brand new DC. Because, we had Jonathan Gannon, who's the head coach of the Cardinals, who was the defensive coordinator, and their defense doesn't look that great. I mean, Kirk Cousins tore him up in prime time, which he doesn't generally do. And the offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, the former one, he's now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. So they got 2 brand new coordinators.
I think that
they
may
need to
have
figure out what's going on.
Maybe that's having an impact.
I do as well. So I think right now what the Eagles have to do is find out what are they as a team. Are they going to be a power run team and say, all right, we're going to hand the ball off to DeAndre Swift, we're going to utilize Jalen Hurts and his running ability, or are they going to be like a drop back and look to pass and get these big time plays? Because they had a couple beautiful big time plays in this game. I'll also say this. I find this pretty interesting. We talk about, or at least some people talk about, that Stephon Diggs ripping Josh Allen in that playoff game against the Bengals. This is week 2 of the NFL season, and A.J. Brown is already ripping Jalen Hurts about the amount of targets and the amount of catches he's getting. It's week 2, and at the time, I think they were up by like 13 points. I think it was 27 to 13 or 14. And A.J. Brown is ripping his quarterback up because he's not getting during the game because he's not getting enough targets or completion. That's something I don't fully understand, and that's why it's very, very difficult to maintain high levels of success, because players have egos. Some players want contracts. They want to be on the big stage. They want to make the flashy plays. Devontae Smith was having a phenomenal game in this one, and DeAndre Swift was rushing for damn near 200 yards. And A.J. Brown, he didn't actually have a very, very good game. He was 4 catches for 29 yards. He didn't have a good game. But that's because other players were making an impact. I mean, this is not the same level, but it's kind of what AB did against the Jets a couple seasons ago when he ended his career, basically. Gronk was having a great game, and they found other ways to win. AB had a problem with it, so he stormed off the field. Now, I don't understand. It's week 2. You're beating up on the Vikings. At the time, you're up by 13 or 14 points, and you're complaining about your playing time. There's 15 other weeks to be played.
It's not a team approach.
It's not.
That's not a team approach, AJ.
And
be a team player. Be a team player. That's what wins games.
I completely agree with that, and that's why I think when it comes down to it, you know what, could we see, a ripple in the chemistry? You got brand new coordinators. Where is Nick Sirianni holding down the culture? Jalen Hurts doesn't seem like the same, incredible player. He's off to a little bit of a slow start. The defense, Darius Slay got cooked in this game. So I'm going to say the defense isn't as good to start the year off. They're not, going for the sack record like they were last season.
I think they were pretty much in control of that game last night, though. They got up 27-7.
But they were this close to losing it.
Well, not really though. There was less than about a minute left, and the Vikings were kicking off. Nobody gets a onside kick. That never works.
How
anymore.
many people do you see fumble out of the end zone going for a touchdown reach though?
Well, how about the Justin Jefferson mistake?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. How many times you see a receiver dive for the end zone, fumble it, and get a touchback call?
I don't know how he dropped that ball. It was weird.
I think the defender hit his elbows. It had to have been, a slip up. But the Vikings have, so far to start the year, they have fumble issues. Kirk Cousins had 3 interceptions, I believe, in week 1 against the Buccaneers. Yeah. They have turnover issues to start the year, and now it's from going 11-0 in one-score games last season to now 0-2. I don't know. The Vikings are not as good as I think people were thinking.
Well, I picked them to be the 3rd in the division. Believe in my picks.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you had the Packers.
So far, they're 0-2. So one comment on A.J. Brown and his comments during the game. I need more touches. I need more targets. I'm reminded of Tom Brady's comments last week when he was being honored by the Patriots. And the Patriots culture, we support one another, and we're here to win.
Right.
If you don't have that mindset, you're not going to be here long. That's what Brady said. I buy it.
Well, the problem is, though, is that they traded for A.J. Brown during the draft. They spent a decent penny on him, and the amount of success that they got in the first season with A.J. Brown has definitely showed. So I don't think they'll be moving off of A.J. Brown anytime soon.
He had a good game against the Patriots. 7 catches.
He did. And, he kind of cooked Christian Gonzalez. It wasn't that – but once again – here's the thing. I'm not going to rip on Christian Gonzalez. It was his first real NFL game, and he's put up against a top 10 receiver in the league. But, when you get cooked, you got to say you got cooked, regardless of the circumstances. But, you could add a little bit.
He did have a big stop against Smith there at the end to get the ball back.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how these two teams, turn out at the end of the year. But as it stands right now, the Eagles do not look as good as they did last year, offensively and defensively. I think they're still trying to find their identity with their 2 brand new coordinators. And also the Vikings, they're really not as good as we think. And honestly, we're going to see how they turn out, later on in the year. But I think there's a decent shot that the Vikings have probably a decent shot to miss the playoffs. But of course, it is only week 2. But, we got to take what we're given, so we'll have to wait and see, obviously. All right, let's get into our next topic, and this one I think is very, very fascinating because, there were some rumors and reports out there this offseason. You're looking through the grapevine to see what the truth is, and so far we have a report here that says that the Patriots do not view JuJu Smith-Schuster, their offseason wide receiver signing, the one that they gave up Jacoby Myers for, and this was supposed to be his replacement, they do not view him as one of their top 5 pass catchers on that team. Now, does that mean, are they including, I think the big thing is are they including running backs, so Ramondre is in that list, or are they only saying wide receivers, which you could also,
that puts him at the bottom of the heap.
Yeah, you could also include tight ends there, but still, that would put him basically at the bottom of the barrel for that category too. So I want to know, did the Patriots make a mistake in signing JuJu this offseason?
I think it's questionable, really. They could have signed Myers. They could have had him back for the same money. And he was a favorite of Mac Jones. Now, in that game last week, they had the 2 rookies in there, Douglas and the Booty, right? And Booty couldn't get his foot down. Would Schuster have gotten his foot down on that play? It's a more experienced receiver. He might have. They didn't have Schuster in there on the last drive, so that says something. They had the 2 rookies in there.
Yeah.
And Devontae Parker's hurt right now. You'd think that Schuster would have been in there on that last drive. When Parker gets back, if they like the rookies better than him, they're not going to play him. Why'd they pay all that money to bring him in? I don't get it.
And that was the big question mark here. You're paying him, relatively the same amount as the Raiders paid for Jacoby Myers. And even when Smith-Schuster signed with the Patriots, Myers said something along the lines of, like, you got to be kidding me or something like that. He was shocked that they signed for basically the same amount of money, and the Patriots sort of gave up on him. I mean, he was Mac Jones's third down, target. He was a huge part, a huge security blanket for Mac Jones.
Were you on that one?
Well, yeah, because the Raiders game.
The Raiders game where he tried to throw the ball back to Mac Jones on the last play of the game instead of just eating it and going into overtime. He threw it back. It was intercepted and went for a touchdown.
Right.
So I think Belichick, he does not like that.
I
think that had something to do with him not being re-signed.
That could be. It's not a horrible theory. But I'll say this. It was shocking the fact that, there was a report out that we didn't talk about on the show, but I mentioned it to you. There was something saying that, like, JuJu's knee is a ticking time bomb for it to explode.
I don't know. Why would they say that? How does anyone know his knee is a ticking time bomb?
Because he's dealing with injuries actually recently, the past couple of years, and with the Chiefs, he was dealing with injuries as well. So I think it's interesting how they signed a guy, and even with, like, why didn't they play him? I mean, he ran 29 routes in that game. Kendrick Bourne had 56. Kayshon Boutte had 45 in that game. He had 4 targets, didn't make a single reception, and he only outran Demario Douglas by 2. 29 for Smith-Schuster, 27 for Demario Douglas, who's a rookie. And, like, the final, I want to say, 2 minutes, something like that, JuJu wasn't even in the game. They didn't even put him in.
I tend to think that was a mistake.
I mean, what can we say here? The fact that
would he have gotten his foot down on that pass if it had been thrown to him? I tend to think he would have.
I don't think he would have had the separation because the past, I think, 3 years, he's been dead last.
There was no separation on that play. On that play, the defender was right behind Boutte. It wasn't like he was wide open.
I'm not saying he's wide open, but there was enough room for him to potentially put his feet down. If he was, even
he could have got his foot down.
He could have. But
he's playing like he's in college. He got 1 foot down. He did it twice. Well, it happened on another play too.
The first time, it was just so nonchalant. I don't even think he was thinking about keeping his feet down. It was just he caught it and just backed up. I don't even think he was thinking it. But I honestly do think it was a mistake here because think about this: the Kansas City Chiefs, the team he was on last season. They were also interested in re-signing JuJu back to that team. And this is a wide receiver that won a Super Bowl that was actually a key contributor in that Super Bowl. And that's how the Chiefs won that Super Bowl. The Patriots reportedly outbid the Kansas City Chiefs for JuJu. Outbid him by a decent margin. So the Chiefs didn't even want to pay him, the sum of, 3 years, up to $33 million. Basically the same thing Jacoby got. So if the Kansas City Chiefs, who just won a Super Bowl with him, didn't even want to pay him that money, and then you decide to let go Mac Jones' security blanket, especially on third down, which was huge, and the Raiders paid him the exact same thing, essentially. What are you going to do? I feel like you got rid of security and, honestly, stability. I mean, Jacoby Myers, he was dinged up a couple times, but a lot of the time, at least last season, you would seem questionable in the injury report, and he'd still be out there playing. I mean, he had a couple incredible catches and incredibly, crucial catches last season and the year before. And you gave up, like I said, security, stability, for injury prone and unknown.
Yeah, a player that everyone liked.
And older. Smith-Schuster's older than Jacoby Myers as well.
Yeah.
So age, unknown, and injury prone, and you took that in for security and stability. It didn't make a lot of sense.
I tend to agree with you.
So I mean,
but I know why they let Myers go.
Well, you
I think
think
it had
it's
to do with that play.
game.
I really do.
Well, then it should start with Ramondre because he's the one that handed it off to Jacoby.
Yeah, well,
I mean, it was very uncharacteristic.
Ramondre was not the one that turned the ball over.
He's the one that began it though.
He did begin it, but he didn't turn it over. He was not the one that turned it over.
Last season was, if you talk about definitions of the Patriot way or the Bill Belichick way, last season was the biggest outlier in the Patriot way. Nothing was true Patriot-like.
No, the big thing with the Patriots is smart players. Players true. Making the smart decision and big plays, and they lacked that last year.
I would tend to agree with you,
and you've got to say this year a little bit in the first game too, right? Boutte didn't get his foot down on that play.
Well,
they would have taken him. What that was on? They were inside the 20
That would have brought them, I think, to the 9-yard line.
9-yard line.
First and goal, I think 25 or so seconds left. Something like that.
They could have had 3, 4. They would have had 4 shots at the end zone.
Probably, yeah. I would definitely say so. Or you would have one shot to get as close as you possibly can, then spike it. That's probably what, a potential opportunity for that. But I said, Kayshon Boutte, unless he shows a lot of improvement, he'll be gone by that. He might be gone by the end of the year. I don't know. They decided to keep Tyquan Thornton. I didn't love that, and he's back on IR for the first 4 or so weeks. So we'll have to wait and see what he looks like. But I find it sort of ironic. Belichick can't draft receivers very well. Now it seems like he can't pick wide receivers very well. Devontae Parker continues to have injury problems. And apparently, reportedly, they've already given up on JuJu, or are near the point of fully giving up on him. So, I'm not sure.
Well, maybe the 2 rookies are going to be great. We'll see. They could be.
There was some juice to both receivers. Both are quicker than I think people expected. However,
Douglas had a good game.
He did have a good game. I think he was 4 catches for 39 yards, something like that. And for a rookie to start off with the 26th ranked skill group, not too bad. But they are the 26th ranked skill group. And this week's going to be very, very tough for the Patriots.
Mac Jones had a very good game.
Mac Jones had a very good game. I guess it was more unexpected of how efficient he could be, especially. It looked like this to start that game. It was the same old Mac Jones. Turnovers, high throws, not looking too good. The Patriots offense was slow as all could be. He settled in. The offensive line held up through most of that game, surprisingly. And he delivered the throws when needed.
Yeah.
A couple mistakes like Kayshon Boutte not keeping his feet in bounds twice.
Yeah.
That was costly. But
I think they came out. They in the second half. They didn't come out with the fire that they needed to.
Right.
Right. They ended the second quarter. They were if that quarter could have kept going, and not been halftime, they might have taken the lead because they were they were moving the ball. They were locked in, and then they came out. And they were not focused in the third quarter. It took them till almost the end of the game before they really got going again.
Right. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Patriots play Miami Dolphins Sunday Night Football, 8:20. Mac Jones versus Tua. Should be an interesting matchup. All right, let's get into our third topic of today's show. The show is flying right by. So Aaron Rodgers provided us with an update on what exactly is going on with him and his leg. He made an Instagram post, which I'll bring up right now. He said, "Thank you to every person that has reached out, called, texted, DM'd, connected through a friend, etc. It has meant a lot to me, and I'll try to get back to all you soon. I'm completely heartbroken and moving through all the emotions, but deeply touched and humbled by the support and love. Please keep me in your thoughts and prayers as I begin the healing process today." And then he made this, interesting quote. Sounds like he's like in Batman or something. "The night is darkest before the dawn, and I shall rise yet again. Proud of my guys." And then he did an update the next day by saying this. "Surgery went great yesterday. Thank you for all the love and prayers and support. And thanks to the GOAT, Dr. El Trach, and his staff for starting me on the road to recovery." And he actually went on the Pat McAfee show, and it really sounded like he's going to make his big comeback. So I want to know, do you think Rodgers should make this monumental comeback? 9 to 12 month recovery time. The first few weeks, you can't do anything, can't even walk, you can't do nothing with it. So I want to know, do you think at 39 years old, turning 40 in December, Rodgers should make a comeback next year to play for the Jets?
Well, it's kind of up to him. If he wants to try, that all the more power to him. But I think it's going to be very hard. I do think it's going to be hard for him to do. I liked what he said. He said, "Give me your doubts, give me your timetables, give me your prognostications, and then watch what I do." So I think he views that as inspiration. People doubting him, so that's good. I think he's got the right attitude. Whether he can make it back or not remains to be seen. That's a tough injury to have at that age, particularly when you're playing quarterback in the NFL.
Right. So, realistically, what the Jets this season, because obviously Aaron Rodgers won't be a part, of the Jets this season with a fully torn Achilles. He'll be out, like I said, 9 to 12 months is the average NFL recovery time for an ACL tear. I want to take a look at the schedule here, because if we're talking about this season, and I'll jump into my opinion whether or not Rodgers should, continue his career. They start off with an incredible come-from-behind win. Zach Wilson leading the way, leading the charge on 9/11, which was truly poetic. You go up against the Cowboys. If you think like the Bills didn't even have Von Miller, and the Jets' offensive line couldn't hold up. Von Miller is easily their best defensive lineman. Wasn't even there, and the Jets' offensive line had trouble. Now you're going up against the Dallas Cowboys this week, who are 9-point favorites. And you think Zach Wilson is not going to get pressured, really? I think he'll get pressured significantly more. And I think, when Zach Wilson, when he feels a little bit of pressure, we'll start to see the old Zach Wilson and not the Zach Wilson we might have seen, against the Bills. The Patriots, we saw what they could do against Jalen Hurts. The Chiefs, Chris Jones is back. I think the Broncos' defense is okay, not great. The pass rush is not all that great. I was surprised how bad overall they played in week 1. But then you go up against the Eagles again, and that Fletcher Cox and that front seven as well. The Giants, their defense was disappointing. However, that entire week 1 game was...
They were horrible.
I don't know what to take from that week 1 game. And so I think...
They weren't ready to play.
This week's going to be difficult to exactly, pick apart exactly how the Giants do. The Chargers... The problem with the Chargers still stands. On paper, they have a great defense. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr., J.C. Jackson. But when they play, they're horrible. They're terrible. I think they gave 36 points and over 500 yards to Tua and the Dolphins. So on paper, to actually playing, it's not even close to being the same. The Raiders, they had the 30th ranked defense last season. I don't know what to make of that. But then you play a bunch of actually pretty decent front sevens throughout the entire season for the Jets. So it's going to be very difficult to see exactly how Zach Wilson will do. And what the Jets should have done this offseason is focus on an offensive line. You had a 38-year-old, tackle in Dwayne Brown, and Mekhi Becton, who was a massive question mark. He was actually started off as the backup tackle. Dwayne Brown was actually the guy who got beat. He tried to do this drop chop block or something like that missed, and that's the thing I ripped on Trent Brown last season for doing. It didn't work. It's ineffective, and that's actually what caused Aaron Rodgers to get injured. So I think it sounds like he's going to come back. It sounds like he wants to make this road to recovery to come back in 2024 to play for the New York Jets. I mean, the hype was there. They're saying, he's saying, give me your doubts. Send me motivation. And so I think, truthfully, if we're taking a look at the chance that Rodgers comes back, I think it's pretty high. But that's actually really shocking just based on how he was in Green Bay. But what I said, what happened was we saw a brand new Aaron Rodgers as soon as he left Green Bay, working with young receivers, staying with the team, being involved in the community, not going on ayahuasca trips or being in hobbit holes in a mountainside in darkness. We saw a brand new Aaron Rodgers. And he's coming out, holding the American flag. I mean, the hype was, insurmountable, and it lasted 75 seconds in 4 plays. I mean,
it's really too bad.
It was unfortunate. And so I think, you know what? We're not going to see a situation where, Aaron Rodgers goes 1 season with the Jets, and then he continues that Brett Favre perfect curve. I don't think he's going to go to the Vikings next season. I think he will be on the Jets next season. So I think Rodgers does make his big comeback, and I think it's going to be interesting to watch, how motivated he really is, because you can't give, an Achilles recovery and Achilles rehab 80%. You got to go 100% in, because this is a 39-year-old, soon-to-be 40-year-old quarterback with a serious NFL injury. Like, some players never come back from an Achilles injury.
The only small benefit to the Jets is now Green Bay gets a second-rounder instead of the first-rounder, because Rodgers doesn't pay 65% of the snaps this year.
No, that is the big piece. So Green Bay, in essence, loses when Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. So it's going to be interesting to see just how the Jets do. But I really think if Zach Wilson just doesn't throw games away like he's prone to do, like he has done in the past, that defense can hold up perfectly fine. I mean, that defense against Josh Allen forced him to 16 points. I mean, what can you say about that? So if Josh Allen, who has arguably the strongest arm in the NFL, going up against Stephon Diggs as well, I would and Breece Hall, who was electrifying in that game, you slowed them down to basically a halt. Zach Wilson came in and scored when it mattered. The Jets could be a sneaky playoff team. I mean, they were last year with Mike White, Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, and Chris Streveler in at quarterback. Why can't they be this year with only Zach Wilson if he just minimizes mistakes?
I think winning the first game is really big for them.
Yeah.
Particularly given that Rodgers got hurt. We're going to get to our picks, but I don't see them beating Dallas. I really don't. I don't think Dallas is going to wipe them out like they did the Giants. but I don't see him beating them at home. Given how well they played on Sunday night, and that's going to carry over for them in their home stadium.
Right.
That's going to be really hard for the Jets, and the Jets will be with Zach Wilson again too. I don't know. I don't see the Jets winning that game.
I think it's going to be very, very difficult for the Jets to win that game. But of course,
if they do, then that will be something.
It's going to be. I think it's going to be shocking. However, we've seen Dak come up very small when it matters.
That's true.
You know, in these close games, Dak Prescott seems to overreach and overextend on what he actually could do. And we saw that in the playoff game last season, literally throwing the game away with 2 horrible interceptions when Brock Purdy was getting shut down by the Cowboys defense. We may see the same thing. I just think it's Zach Wilson. He's thrown games away. I can't see him being all of a sudden this decent quarterback.
They haven't brought in another backup yet, right?
Not.
I think they're doing that because of the psyche issue with Zach Wilson. Is Strebler the backup?
I think Trevor's I think they have Tim Boyle as a backup.
Tim Boyle.
Tim Boyle, yeah.
Wow.
So
I don't think Zach Wilson's got much to worry about from him. Huh?
I would probably
Tim
agree.
Boyle. I never heard of him.
I think he was on the Packers a while ago. Actually, right now, he has no backup. I just looked at the ESPN depth chart.
There has to be a backup.
It's Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, technically, who just got put on the IR for the rest of the season. So at the moment, they do not have a backup. So it's going to be interesting. Maybe Zach Wilson's the only
Maybe
quarterback.
it'll be Strebler.
Maybe.
You can't go into a game with not a backup quarterback, right? In the NFL, anybody can get hurt at any time.
Or if Zach Wilson just becomes Zach Wilson again, we saw him get benched twice in a season, and his team is still
So
saying,
they bench him with,
he's our guy in the future.
So they bench him with no quarterback to put in there?
You're going to put in maybe Randall Cobb at quarterback. Who knows?
Yeah, Randall Cobb used to be a quarterback.
So
right?
we'll have to see. But I agree with you. I don't think the Cowboys going to.
Randall Cobb must be bummed out by this, right?
I would say so. I would say him and Alan Lazard are both
bummed out, right?
Bummed out. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But of course, the Jets are moving forward with Zach Wilson as their quarterback 1. All right. So coming up, Chris Paul. It was the big news. Chris Paul is expected to be a part of the Golden State starting 5. Is that a good idea? We'll talk about that also. We make our Week 2 picks for the NFL season, and the show wraps up with my Harvey Hot Hand right after this.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name's Nathan Harvey, and as always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic. So it's pretty interesting. Chris Paul, reportedly expected to be a part of the starting 5 for the Golden State Warriors in 2023 and will apparently play in short spurts or about 5 minutes, according to ESPN's Mark Spears. And he said this in an appearance on Yahoo Sports' Vincent Goodwill's podcast, Good Word with Goodwill. And this is what he had to say. He said, I do expect him to start, and I think it's like in 5-minute spurts. I don't know what they I don't know what they really want his numbers to be high, but I think they're going to try. I could be wrong, but that's the gist I'm getting. This isn't an opinion that he's expected to start. It's what I'm hearing. He's never not started in his career, and that's true. He's played a bunch of games. Not a single time has he ever been considered a backup guard. Now, the projected starting 5, I tried to find a projected starting 5, and the closest one I got that honestly technically makes the most sense, but I think is, we'll talk about it obviously, is Steph Curry is the starting point guard, then Chris Paul the shooting guard, Klay Thompson the 3, Andrew Wiggins the 4, and then Draymond Green, 6 or 6'9", Draymond Green being your 5. So I want to know, do you think Chris Paul should be a part of the starting lineup alongside Steph Curry?
I don't think the Warriors really knew what they were doing when they picked Chris Paul, when they brought him in, right? Because the starting five for the Warriors has always been pretty good, and the main knock on it has been they aren't big enough. With the big teams, with the muscle guys up front, can dominate them somewhat. But the starting five of Looney, Wiggins, Curry, Green, Thompson been one of the best, right? And you're going to put Chris Paul in there to get smaller? That's what's going to happen, right? Somebody's got to sit down. I don't think it's Looney that sits down. I think it's Wiggins. I think Wiggins is the one that's going to be the sixth man now. And I don't think that's the best move for them either. So I'm not sure what they're doing here. I'm not sure that they know what they did. It was not the guy that normally makes the picks and has the strategy for the players for the Warriors that did this. It was Mike Dunleavy Jr. He's their new GM. He's the one that made this selection and took Chris Paul. So I'm not sure they know what they're doing. That's my conclusion.
Well, here's the thing. No matter what you do, as soon as you input Chris Paul into the starting lineup, it gets significantly worse. Last season, now the Warriors last season, we all know they weren't very good. They had an incredible home record. You go on the road, and it's like they completely fall apart. What was shocking, and I still can't believe this is true just based on how they looked. When Curry, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, and Looney were out there on the court together, that starting five, their net rating, so I think it's like points per 100 possessions, was 10 higher than the Denver Nuggets. They were technically, based on net rating, the best starting five in the entire NBA last season. So no matter what you do, if you take a single player out of the lineup, they get worse. And you're right. I ripped on them, and at least, to start the year, I think they went like 0-7 on the road. And it was so difficult to dissect because they had all these players. They still had Draymond. They had Curry, who was going off. Klay Thompson wasn't too bad throughout the year. Honestly, this is one of his best years in a few years. You had Wiggins there. And the big question was, what the hell is going on with the Warriors? Why can't they win on the road? I think it's a lot of things. The first off, as soon as you take Steph Curry off, the plus minus as soon as Curry comes off the court is drastically different. And we saw that in the playoffs. When Curry was out there on the floor, the Warriors were winning left, right, front, and center. Then you could take them off, and that's where the Kings started to make massive comebacks. They obviously couldn't win the series, but they brought them to 7, which was surprising to most. But they were very bad on some key statistics. The first one would be free throw percentage. Dead last in free throw attempts. They're a small team. They don't have a big guy who can just dish it to get fouled down low. We saw what Giannis was in the free throw attempts. We see what Jokic was. We see what Embiid is on free throw attempts. All have massive numbers because they're a guy that can say, hey, let's go. We're going to take the ball. We're going to drive down low. We're going to get a foul call. We're going to make a couple free throws. They were also 25th in blocks. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you're a very, very small team. You don't have a guy that could, jump over players and get blocks. They were 30th in turnovers, a very, very sloppy team. That could have been because Jordan Poole kind of screwed with the culture, him and Draymond Green. They had that gigantic punch that kind of screwed the season over potentially. They were also 28th in personal fouls, which once again digs into just playing dumb basketball. Maybe lack of culture, who knows? They were not good in offensive rebounds. That could be because they don't really have anyone to get offensive rebounds. 2-point percentages, they were pretty low in that as well. 2-point attempts, I should say, that they were pretty low. So the team all around wasn't all that great. And the fact that you're going from like a near 7-foot player like Kevon Looney, you're going to replace him with 6'6" Draymond Green at the 5. You're already, on average, the smallest team in the NBA. Now,
put Wiggins down instead.
Wiggins is their second best defender. Why would you put down your second?
I know,
Draymond's
it's
probably
tough.
number 1. Rebounding is going to be non-existent. But however, it really depends. If that 5-minute stretch where Chris Paul's out there to start the game, if that's brutal, you're getting absolutely smoked on the boards, you can't do nothing, you're fouling a lot, you got to change it quickly. You can't let that play on because it's right there. It's smacking you in the face.
Yeah.
This is not a young player that you got to see, develop. This is a veteran. This is a near 40-year-old veteran in the NBA. So if it doesn't work, you got to change it immediately.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, it's going to get people all upset too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Chris Paul will be one of them, and he's a Hall of Fame player. So it could create a chemistry problem with the team and a team camaraderie problem,
right?
I think. So I think they took a big risk taking him. And he's never won a championship.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's had some bad luck along the way. Maybe it has something to do with the way he plays and interacts with the other players. I don't know.
Could be.
19 years he's been in the league and hasn't won a championship yet. I'm not so sure why they think he's going to win it with them.
Well, not only that, Draymond believes they could. That he's wondering why can't they win 2 more championships? Well, I'll tell you why. Look at what the Lakers did to the Warriors. They just dominated them down low. I mean, if Sabonis did, even close to what he was doing during the regular season, the Kings should have won that series hands down.
He didn't have a good series.
He didn't have a good series whatsoever, and it also hurt that De'Aaron Fox had that injury with the tip of his shooting hand, tip of his middle finger on his shooting hand. So what the Warriors did, I mean, to have that bad of a road record, to lose the first 2 games to the Kings, and then Steph Curry going off when he needed to. I mean, without Curry, that series would have been over. They could have been maybe swept in that series without Curry. So I really don't know. You're going to get slower. The play styles don't exactly blend perfectly. What Chris Paul is, he's not a 2 guard. He's really not a 2 guard. So Curry would need to change. Curry and Chris Paul would need to swap their positions. Curry goes down to the 2. Chris Paul, who's a legitimate point guard, goes to the 1. So I don't know if this will work out. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Warriors do to start the season. I would say give it 2-3 weeks. If you're getting smoked, to start the game in those first 5 minutes, something's got to change. Either put him on the back 5.
You know what I do? I think it's too much of a risk to make him a starter right off the bat, because if it blows up, then the rest of the season is going to be affected by it. I'd start him off the bench. I would not make him the starter.
Well, now
you've got the 5 that you have been one of the best in the NBA, and you can't sacrifice the height. Chris Paul is injury prone. Better to give him a little bit fewer minutes and bring him off the bench as a spark. I wouldn't start him.
I wouldn't either. And reportedly, they signed a new center. I'm forgetting his name, but they're also bringing in Dwight Howard to potentially be a part of that team. So they might bring back.
They're going ancient.
Yeah,
let's go ancient.
Yeah, apparently they want to bring every used to be phenomenal player in the NBA. They're just bringing let's bring them on down. We'll see how they do.
That usually winds up with most of them hurt most of the year.
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, Dwight Howard, I think, was playing in Taiwan, and it was absolutely dominating in Taiwan.
I can understand that.
How
many 7-footers are there in Taiwan?
Who knows? He was dropping, I think, like 30 points a game, 15 to 20 rebounds a game, and he was blowing up over there. And now, could he be playing for Golden State? I mean, they would be the oldest team, and of course that would help him in size. But I mean, Dwight Howard, no one wanted him in the NBA. Hell, he's trying to campaign for Team USA, and he said that if he doesn't get picked for Team USA for the Olympics, that I think he said he's going to go play in Taiwan and apparently crush United States. That's what he was saying supposedly. I don't know if that's. I guarantee you that's not true. But it's very interesting to see what the Warriors are doing. They're trying to rebuild a culture that was fractured last season, and bringing in a piece like Chris Paul when their clear deficit was size. I don't know if that's a good idea, and I think that could blow up right in their face.
I think it was, it remains to be seen, but I think it was a high-risk move.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into our second to last topic. These are our picks for week 2 of the NFL season. A quick recap. This was week 1. Looked pretty good to start off. Only 1 X there for the win-loss, but then middle of the pack there, a lot of X's for me at least. I went 10-6 for my win-loss record, and 8-8. I went 500 for my point spread. But let's get into this week's series of picks. Let's go. So I start off this week pretty well, I would say. Starting off with the Eagles win. Of course, that was impressive for me.
You're 2 in a row on Thursday night.
I am 2-0. I'm 2-0. Have 2 in a row as well. Although there was a push for the point spread, so that's unfortunate. But let's break it down with the next game. Packers at Falcons. I got the Falcons winning here. Now, a lot of injuries are on the Packers side this time. You got Christian Watson dealing with an injury. Bakhtiari was resting. He was questionable, supposedly. Romeo Doubs is dealing with an injury. It looks like Aaron Jones probably won't go. So there's a lot of crucial injuries for the Packers that I think actually, obviously benefit the Falcons. And I think the Falcons will obviously, I think they're going to win here. Bijan Robinson's going to have a great game. Cordell Patterson's coming back. Their offensive line did pretty well last week. So I'll take the Falcons to win. The next one, the Seahawks look terrible against the Rams. Surprisingly bad against the Rams. Their offensive line is decimated. Charles Cross won't play. Their left tackle won't play in this game. Going up against I would say a surging Lions defense that played pretty well against the Chiefs in Week 1 on Thursday Night Football. So I'll take the Lions to win here. I mean, their offense is explosive. The Lions is. I don't think the Seahawks defense is all that great this year. They didn't really show much against a Rams team that was without the number one receiver in Cooper Kupp, who's on the IR right now, and Matthew Stafford tore up that defense. So I think Jared Goff does sort of the same thing here. Tears up the Seahawks defense. I have them winning and covering the 4.5. Bears and Buccaneers -2.5 in favor of the Buccaneers. This one is pretty interesting, and I'm sticking with. I'm shockingly picking Baker Mayfield. If you've been around the show for a little while, you know that I don't exactly like Baker Mayfield, but I'm more so disappointed when Baker has brought the past couple seasons. So I think it's shocking to at least some that I'm picking the Buccaneers for this one. The Bears look bad. I think they've lost their past 10 games. I mean, it's been ugly. Justin Fields has not looked that great. Week 1 against the Packers, against Jordan Love, who I guess at least a lot in the media, they had no faith in Jordan Love to bring sort of similar success that at least Aaron Rodgers did last season. I was one of them that said, why can't Jordan Love do pretty much average like Rodgers did last season? And so far, he's on a great start. The Bears couldn't stop nothing. They got absolutely walloped in Week 1, and I think the Buccaneers, with the way that defense played against Kirk Cousins, forcing 4 turnovers in Week 1, Baker Mayfield playing pretty well, pretty efficiently, I'll take the Buccaneers to win in Week 2 and cover the 2.5. My first upset of the week, I got the Colts beating out the Texans. Now, C.J. Stroud just went on the injury list, questionable for this game. This was about, I want to say, 2 hours ago, give or take. I really like what I saw with the Colts. The Colts almost beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 1. Now, at the very end, they pulled away. However, they were in that game for a large part of it. And actually, up until the fourth quarter, I believe they were actually leading in the game. So I was very impressed with what I saw with Anthony Richardson. He was the rawest quarterback in the draft. I was impressed with what he did in his first game against Trevor Lawrence, who just had a great year last year. I'll take the Colts to win and obviously cover in an upset. Colts take the win over the Texans. Next one, Bills, Raiders, -8.5. I really don't like the Raiders in this one. I'll take the Bills. You know, on the national stage, you got embarrassed by Zach Wilson, who, 99% of the NFL thinks is not a great quarterback, but of course Robert Saleh is really the only 1% that still says that he's the next Jets quarterback. So I think the Bills absolutely tear the Raiders a new one here. I think Jimmy G, he's efficient, but not really that effective. I'll say that the Bills win and cover a massive 8.5 point spread. The next one, Ravens, Bengals. The Ravens are dealing with some massive injuries. J.K. Dobbins went down. Staley is out, the offensive lineman for the Ravens. I think Joe Burrow gets back on track here. Last season, the Bengals start off 0-2, and there's 11% chance to make the playoffs statistically after going 0-2, and the Bengals did it. I do think they get on to a better start this season. I think they go 1-1 and win over the Ravens. I do think Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd get that connection going with a little bit of sprinkling of Joe Mixon in there. I think the Bengals, bounce back with a win over the Ravens. Next one, Chargers favored on the road at the Titans. This is where I think we could see a decent Chargers defense. At least on paper, they're phenomenal, but playing-wise, they haven't been nearly the caliber they are that they are on paper. Ryan Tannehill looks terrible. So much so that Mike Vrabel is even calling out his quarterback, saying that we need to get the ball to the open receivers. We need to make the throws. And obviously, Ryan Tannehill in his first game this season against the Saints did not do that. Hell, he threw 3 interceptions and looked absolutely abysmal. I think with the pass rush of Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, along with, cornerbacks and defensive backs like Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr., and also J.C. Jackson, I think the defense tears up the Titans, and also they don't have a great offensive line, the Titans. I think the Chargers get an easy win here and cover a 3-point spread on the road. Next one, the second upset, Chiefs at Jaguars. Chiefs favored by 3.5. I'll take the Jaguars at plus 3.5. What I saw from the Jaguars in Week 1 and what I saw with Calvin Ridley, the big question mark was, coming back from his suspension, what can Calvin Ridley bring? And apparently, he could bring a lot because he was tearing up in Week 1, and I think that's sort of the same thing with this one. So I do think, especially Christian Kirk loves man coverage, and that's what the Chiefs primarily play, is man coverage on defense, and that's where he finds a lot of his success. So I'm going to take the Jaguars to win here with Christian Kirk, with Calvin Ridley, with Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, a building defense. I really like the Jaguars, and Trevor Lawrence finally beats Mahomes. Next one, 49ers, 7.5-point favorites on the road at the Rams. Now, the Rams look really good. I gave up on the Rams by, what I heard from Matthew Stafford's wife and what I heard through the grapevine of, how bad the defense was and what we saw in the preseason. They couldn't stop nobody. And a 7.5-point spread on the road, that means on an equal playing field, the 49ers would be 10.5-point favorites because normally the home team gets 3 points. I'll take the 49ers to win here. These big point spreads generally you don't want to take. However, I'll say this. Brock Purdy looked actually really, really good. But that defense in week 1 against Kenny Pickett and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were tearing it up in the preseason, they took care of business. And I think that's going to be relatively the same thing here. I think the pass rush with the Rams offensive line that isn't that great. Cooper Kupp is still on the IR. He'll be on the IR for a number of weeks now. I think the 49ers will take advantage of that situation. I think they'll win and cover a 7.5-point spread on the road. The next, at least, point spread, upset here. Giants at Cardinals. I'll take the Cardinals +4, but I'll take the Giants to win here. What we saw week 1, not great. It was supposed to be a better offensive line. It really wasn't. Hell, it may have even been worse. New weapons. You didn't really have time to showcase them because of the fact that the Cowboys, they really did a phenomenal job on defense. And Saquon, he's back from his hiatus. Day 1 of training camp, he came back. Supposed to be this, great running back still. He really had no effect on the game. The Cardinals actually played surprisingly well and were leading late in the game against the Commanders, who at least by Pro Football Focus's standard has like a top 10 defense and a top, 15 offensive line. They're about average on the offensive line. And they actually did a pretty good job with Joshua Dobbs as quarterback. I think the Cardinals actually surprisingly keep it close strictly because Daniel Jones against the Cardinals has not been that great. And I understand people are going to say, well, the fact that Kyler Murray was the quarterback of the Cardinals, didn't that have any effect? Not really. Kyler Murray did not show up and show out against the Giants either of their appearances. It was really the fact that the running game torched the Giants. And I think we can see the same thing right now in this week against the Giants. I'll take the Giants to win. However, the Cardinals do cover. The next one, we talked about this early on in the show, Jets-Cowboys. The Cowboys defense we saw in week 1. They probably have the best defense in the NFL. With the Jets' poor offensive line, Zach Wilson, this doesn't even need to be about Dak Prescott and his potential to be turnover prone. I think the defense is good enough to hold this game, not even close. I'll take the Cowboys to rout the Jets and cover the -9-point spread on the at home. Commanders at Broncos. I'll take the Broncos to win here. It was not pretty in week 1. It really wasn't. And yes, Chase Young is making his debut in this week against the Broncos. I do think this is where we could see Jerry Jeudy's back this week. Getting that weapon back for Russell Wilson is going to be a key piece to whether or not Russell Wilson will have success this year. I will take the Broncos to have a comeback game, win in week 2, cover the 3.5-point spread. Next one, Sunday Night Football, Patriots-Dolphins. 2 is 4-0 against the Patriots in his career, and that continues. He goes 5-0 to begin his career against the Patriots. Yes, Jonathan Jones. He has actually done pretty well against Tyreek Hill, but yeah, the other thing was J.C. Jackson was also against Tyreek Hill, in the past, and he was a very, very good cornerback for the Patriots. Not so much on the Chargers. However, the next guy is Christian Gonzalez, who got torched. Now, his second game will either be against Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill, depending on how they play it. If you play man coverage like the Chargers did, you're going to have a similar result that game turned out to be. Over 500 yards given up by the Chargers, and I think the Patriots should play a lot of zone. Now, to start the year, they played a lot of man against the Eagles, and that turned out to be okay, not great. You need to play zone against Tyreek Hill. He's too fast for man coverage. It doesn't matter who you are as a cornerback. I think the Patriots need to play zone, but I don't think it'll be that effective. I'll take the Eagles to win. Or sorry, not the Eagles. I'll take the Dolphins to win on the road and cover the -3-point spread. 2 Monday night games, which is pretty surprising. Saints at Panthers. Saints -3-point favorites on the road at the Panthers. I'll take the Saints here. Saints didn't have a great start. Derek Carr didn't look great. The Titans defense, I would say an underrated Titans defense, did a pretty good job against the Saints. The Panthers, however, on the other hand, not so much. They just lost J.C. Horn for a number of weeks. He got put on IR. He'll be back about midway through the year. That's a crucial loss to that Panthers defense. I'll take the Saints here to win pretty easily. Derek Carr, an experienced quarterback, up against a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young. They'll win and cover the -3-point spread. And for the first time since, I think, 1993, I have the Browns starting their season 2-0. What that defense did to, I would say, a better offensive line on paper than what the Steelers have, and they decimated Joe Burrow. and that Bengals offense, I'll take the Browns and their defense to take over against the Steelers and come out with a 2.5-point win, or over 2.5-point win on Monday Night Football, and do what they haven't done since 1993 and start off 2-0. Those are my picks. Week 2 is weird. I don't feel as confident in my picks during week 2. Week 1, I felt like I knew it. You just picked the better team on paper. It turned out to be okay in the win-loss, but we'll have to wait and see, obviously. So let's get into your picks for week 2.
Okay, well.
Sorry, I'll bring it up in a second. Actually, let's do a recap of your week 1 picks. Actually, where's the recap? Do we have it? I don't think we have it. So let's just jump into your picks.
Okay, so last week I was 8-8, right? And I was 8-8 on the spread too.
Yeah, you went 5.
And for me, actually, that's not so bad. Given last year first week, I got decimated.
You got crushed.
Yeah, and I got way behind on the point spread games and never really recovered from it. So I'm okay with starting at 500 last week, hoping for better results this week. So let's get right into it here. I did okay last night, picked the Eagles, and they managed to win and cover. It was a tie, right, on the cover for them.
It was a push,
Push, yeah. I think the Packers, even though they've got the injuries, I think they're with Jordan Love in there. Their defense playing pretty well, and the Vikings. The Falcons. I think they're a very questionable team this year. Although I think they've improved themselves. I like the Packers to go in there and win the game. The Lions. I think Seattle probably better than what they showed last week. The Rams beat them pretty handily, but I don't think the Seattle's that bad a team. They have a decent coach and Pete Carroll, and I think that they're going to be a tough opponent for the Lions. But I'm picking the Lions, but I don't think they'll cover. The Raiders Bucks game.
That's the Bears Bucks.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Bears Bucks. The Bears, to me, I just think they're not. They proved last week they're still not a very good team. The Bucks, they had a surprising win last week. They were all fired up at the end there. I think that carries over into Sunday's game, and I picked the Bucks, and they cover. The Texans and the Colts. This was a tough one for me. I thought about this quite a bit. I think if C.J. Stroud is hurt and doesn't play, it might be okay. I think Mills is a decent backup. In fact, he was the starter last year and he had some success, but he was spotty. But I think with an opportunity to come in and play, particularly against the Colts, or I am not a very good team, I picked them to be last. And Richardson, who played well last week, right? You'd have to say he really, for a guy who hadn't had much experience playing quarterback even in college, came out and really showed some stuff. So he may be somebody that's really going to be on the rise. But I think the Texans are at home. That's kind of why I picked them at home and to cover. The Bills, I think the Bills are going to stomp the Raiders because they're going to be very upset about the loss against the Jets. And Josh Allen, I hope he just needs to calm down a little bit. I just think he was overhyped for the Jets game. He may be overhyped for this one too because he's thinking, I played terrible. I lost the game for us last week. I got to overdo it this week, and that could hurt. They could hurt the Bills if he comes out that way. And the point spread's pretty big here, and I was a little worried about that. But I'm still going to go with the Bills at home. Second game, having lost the first one, they're going to go 1-1. Raiders just don't have it against the Bills team, so I look for the Bills to cover. The Bengals and the Ravens, I think it's kind of a similar game, really, in the mindset of the quarterbacks to what the Bills did. With Joe Burrow playing so poor, and same with Josh Allen. I think Joe Burrow quits himself and does much better in this game, and the Bengals come out with the win, but it's going to be a very close game. I think the Ravens are a good team. I think they have a great coach, and I think they'll give the Bengals a great game. The only reason. The main reason I think the Bengals will win is because they lost by surprise in a way last week, in a very bad game for the whole team, and they're going to try to bounce back here. And I do think they will pull out a very close win against the Ravens. The Chargers and the Titans, I had a really tough time with this one too. I think the Titans are, except if Tannehill can not make so many mistakes, they have the running game, which has been elite in the NFL in the past quite a number of years. I think that it could be very close. 3 points. The Chargers played well last week on offense. Their defense couldn't stop Miami. Well, Miami's got an elite offense, so I see the Chargers winning and covering. I think Kansas City bounces back against the Jaguars. The Jaguars are at home. I bet Kelce will play. Chris Jones is going to be in there. That's going to give the team a spark and a bounce, and I think they'll find a way to win and cover. San Francisco, dominant last week against the Steelers. They have the Rams number. I'm sorry. They beat the Rams in the regular season every game, every year. So I do think it will be close, though. The Rams look better than what we thought they were going to be. They do have a good coach in McVay. And Stafford looks like he's starting off really well. I don't know, is Cooper Kupp, is he going to play in this game?
He's on IR.
He's on IR, yeah. So I still think I think it'll be close, so I don't think that the San Francisco's going to cover, but I do think they will win. Similar with the Giants and the Cardinals, I think this will be a very close game. I don't think the Giants will cover. The Giants looked terrible last week. They couldn't look any worse. The only thing they got going for them here is the Cardinals are pretty poor too. Although the Cardinals played pretty well last week, it was surprising. They were in the game, the whole game, and lost there at the end. So I think it will be a very close game with the Giants pulling it out. The Cowboys and the Jets, I do think the Cowboys are going to win this game, but I don't think they will cover. I don't think the Cowboys will stomp a New York team the way they did last week. I think the Jets will play it on the ground. They have a really good running game with Hall back. I think he'll start getting even more carries now that he's got a game under his belt and he's coming back from that ACL tear. They also have Dalvin Cook, yeah, as the backup, who's has been an elite running back all through his career. He didn't look so hot last week, but it was against the Patriots. The Patriots are very good against the run. So I do pick that Dallas will win. I don't think they'll cover. The Broncos and the Commanders, this is another one I had a very hard time with. The Broncos may be terrible again this year. It's hard to say. They lost last week. They should have, against the team I think they should have beat. I picked them to win. I'm picking them to win again, but if they lose this game against the Commanders, I'm going to stop picking them. I do think it will be close. I don't think they'll cover, but I do think they'll win. Sunday night football, again, I go with my heart over my head with the Patriots beating the Miami Dolphins. They've had a tough time with the Dolphins the last couple of years. Tua has undefeated against them. That's motivation for the Patriots, who have what looks like one of the best defenses in the league. Will they be able to stop that air attack? It'll be interesting to see. They're not going to stop it. They're just going to try to slow it down. The Patriots got to pick it up on offense. They got to have an offense that will match the Dolphins' points. And in the end, I think it will be a field goal, and the Patriots will win by 3. So the Saints and the Panthers, the Saints didn't look so great last week, but they managed to win. So, and I think they will again this week. I see the Panthers as an up-and-coming team, but a rebuild team this year with Bryce Young as a rookie quarterback. I think he'll start to play better and better throughout the season, but this is only week 2. I think that's an advantage for the Saints, and they will cover and win. I'm picking the Steelers over the Browns. I hate the Browns. I probably go against them most every game, no matter who they're playing. But I don't think Mike Tomlin's going to lose 2 in a row to start the season, not the way their team played at the end of last year. They did get beat badly by San Francisco. I see San Francisco as one of the top 3 teams in the league. So, and I don't know what the story was with Pittsburgh. Maybe they just didn't seem quite ready to play, and to lose like that to San Francisco surprised me. I picked San Francisco to win, but I didn't think they would win by that much. So I see the Steelers bouncing back and beating, and they'll win. So they'll beat the point spread. Yeah.
I want to ask you this question. I think it's pretty fascinating. Well, I'll say this: 2 things. The first one would be that Commanders-Broncos game. If the Broncos lose, Russell Wilson's not going to be here by mid-year. He's either going to get benched or he's going to get dropped. Because I really don't think Sean Payton is going to put up, losing to Jimmy G and the Raiders, and that was a bad game. It didn't look very good. And then going up against Sam Howell and losing to Sam Howell. What do you think on that one, real quick?
I don't think they're going to get rid of him because they owe him too much money. But you could see him. I don't think they'll bench him yet. I think that he get at least a couple more starts. But if they go 0-4, I think they're going to sit. They're going to sit him and let Stidham try.
Okay, yeah. And also, if the Cardinals beat the Giants, what will that say about where this team's headed? It's supposed to be brand new weapons, better offensive line, defense is always improving. What would that say about the Giants?
We'll say more people will start to say last year was a fluke.
I would probably agree with that. It's time. This is my favorite time of these Friday shows. It is my Harvey hot hand.
I think it's tougher this week.
It's gonna be. It is much tougher. I decided to take a couple shots here, a couple risks that if you followed last season with my Harvey hot hand, some moves I don't make, some risky bets that I don't necessarily love to pick. However, to start the year, I am 4-1. So if you bet $20 on the Fox Bet Sportsbook for this past week, you would have bet $100, $20 for each of my bets. You would have came out with $170. So let's continue the streak here. My only loss was the Vikings-Bucks. The Vikings should have won that game. But if the Vikings are terrible this year, probably not. They're not deserving to win this to win that game. So let's begin with my first pick of my Harvey Hot End of Week 2. It is
Colts at Texans.
Colts at Texans here. I got the Colts +1 over the Texans here. So with Anthony Richardson, and I talked about this when I made my picks. Week 1 was very, very impressive for Anthony Richardson, who's the rawest quarterback coming out of this draft right now. What he showed was actually a lot of promise, and more promise than I was actually expecting. The offensive line did pretty well against the Jaguars. The receivers actually made a couple nice throws, and Anthony Richardson overall looked significantly better than I think a lot of us were expecting based on his experience, even throwing a football in his entire career. Now, against the Texans with C.J. Stroud on the injury report about 2 hours ago he got put on, we could potentially be seeing Anthony Richardson take over this game, and the Colts were leading late in that game, and it looked like the Jaguars may lose Week 1 against the Colts. The Jaguars pulled out. I will take the Colts in a upset victory over the Houston Texans. Let's go with the next one.
Packers at Falcons.
So I got the Packers at the Falcons here. I'll take the Falcons -1.5 and win 24-20 over the Packers. I think the running game is going to be better on the Falcons side. The offensive line is going to hold up. And that Falcons defense actually played pretty well in Week 1. Now, I'll also say this. Another reason why I'm picking the Falcons here, I originally had the Packers winning this game. But then when you say Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs and Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones, all of them dealing with injuries, why can't the Falcons definitely, get on top of that and really come out with the victory here? Dealing with crucial injuries, and that's what we saw in Week 1. Romeo Doubs was huge. Christian Watson had some moments, and Aaron Jones was running the hell out of the football. So now we're going to see A.J. Dillon and, your third-string wide receiver go up against the Falcons defense, which is surprisingly good. I'll take the Falcons to win and cover. I'll have them cover the 1.5 point spread, win 24-20.
Jets at Cowboys.
Jets at Cowboys, a -9 point spread. Now, this is one of the picks I say, if it gets near double digits or it's a double-digit point spread, do not bet on it or pick the other team. In this case, with the way the Cowboys played in Week 1 against the Giants, who have an upgraded offensive line supposedly, who have better weapons and Saquon's back, they did not look good. Hell, the Giants defense also didn't look very good. I'll take the Cowboys to win and cover the -9 point spread because the Jets offensive line, who is a massive question mark, well, it sort of answered all of our questions. They are actually terrible, so much so that guess what? All the hype for Aaron Rodgers left the building in 75 seconds on Monday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills. I'll take the Cowboys to win here. Dominate in a way that's not a high point scoring because I think both defenses need to be respected here. The Jets easily have a top 5 defense right now in the NFL. The Cowboys have the number 1 defense in the NFL. I think Zach Wilson makes a couple mistakes, but eventually does put up some points out of the Cowboys covering the 9-point spread and winning 27-14.
Giants at Cardinals.
We're sticking with New York. Giants at Cardinals. I'll take the Cardinals +4 here at home. The Cardinals played surprisingly well against the Commanders in Week 1. So much so is that I was really afraid the Commanders were about to drop Week 1 to these Cardinals. They got a number of sacks against an offensive line that isn't exactly terrible. It's about average. The Giants, on the other hand, have a horrible offensive line. So if you're telling me against an average offensive line, the Cardinals caused a lot of disruption and Josh Dobbs wasn't absolutely abysmal, I think the Cardinals, and based on Daniel Jones' history against the Cardinals, he's 0-2 with 2 absolute blowout losses. I'll take the Cardinals to keep it close here. Daniel Jones, however, does get his first win against the Cardinals. The Cardinals cover the +4, but the Giants come out on top 23-20.
Bears at Buccaneers.
And the final one of this week, I got the Bears the Bears at the Buccaneers. I'll take the Buccaneers -2.5 over the Bears here. Baker Mayfield looked good, looked efficient in his first week with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Sort of the replacement for Tom Brady, very large shoes to fill. He didn't fill them in its entirety. However, he did a good enough job. That defense, on the other hand, capitalized, forcing Kirk Cousins to commit 4 turnovers, which is huge. Could that be a trend for the Vikings? Maybe. Or is that just the way the Buccaneers defense is going to be this season? Potentially. Going up against Justin Fields, who once again looks more of a runner than a quarterback, a bad offensive line, a not great defense who got torched by Jordan Love, who still doesn't have a lot of respect from media and from sort of other NFL teams and executives all around. A huge question mark for a lot of teams and a lot of people in the media. I thought he could do sort of the same thing Aaron Rodgers did last season. Well, he did better because he absolutely crushed the Bears. And with Justin Fields and this Bears team, it doesn't look good. Justin Fields having a bunch of the MVP votes, that blew my mind. And guess what? People are telling me that I'm going to regret saying that. Well, so far, my take has not aged like sour milk as a lot of people were expecting it to. I got Baker Mayfield and that Buccaneers defense to cover the -2.5 point spread and win 21-17. That wraps up week 2 of my Harvey hot hand, and I don't feel great about a couple of those picks. I don't feel like, here's the thing. If Jordan Love somehow comes out without his top 2 receivers, let's say Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson don't play, and he somehow pulls out this win, Jordan Love is a legitimate guy. Like he's a legitimate franchise quarterback for the Packers because that would be a challenge, and your main running back's out. If he somehow pulls out this win, regardless of the team it is, that's incredibly impressive. So that's why I think the Falcons, like that game is going to be interesting. And I think, could we see what Daniel Jones was last season? You know, really efficient and really dominant. But then again, the Cardinals just actually played okay. I thought they would get smoked by the Commanders. And Sam Howell, a lot of people have Sam Howell, and the Commanders potentially being the number 3 or number 2 seed in some cases in the NFC East. I saw a couple places where the Commanders were outpacing the Eagles in the NFC East, which I think is absurd. But I saw it in more places than I should have.
Yeah, well, I think the picks are tougher this week, and I think your picks, we'll see.
I start off 4-1.
Yeah, that was great.
I have a little bit of. I should have gone 5-0. I should have. If the Vikings didn't have, if Kirk Cousins didn't choke, if the performances just swapped, A, it would have made more sense, and B, it would have been perfectly fine. So I don't know. It's going to be rough, but
yeah,
I don't know.
It'll be fun to watch.
I don't know. This week's going to be interesting with Travis Kelce coming back and Chris Jones coming back. I don't know if the Jaguars.
I thought you might be able to. I thought you might take the Chiefs as a result of that, but they are playing the Jaguars, and Jaguars are at home, and the Jaguars are really a much better team than they were Well, they improved all throughout last year, and they ended the year as they won a playoff game.
They did. They had a 24-point comeback in that playoff game too.
Right.
So I mean, I was thinking about putting the Jaguars here, but I don't trust the bet enough to put it here. I think the Colts, the way I saw them in Week 1. I really like the way they looked. I mean, they were leading the Jaguars, and it was very, very close up until like the very end where the Jaguars pulled away. And besides, with CJ Stroud being on the injury report this week, about 2 hours before the show started, I don't love that. And besides, he didn't even play that well in week 1. He didn't even play that well. So, I don't know. I don't feel great about these picks, but I feel good enough to bet. I think, so far my track record's pretty good. I had about 55% it was like 54.5% last season, starting off at 80% this season. So I don't know.
One week. That was 1 week.
It is 1 week, but it's a good start. Now, here's the thing. Here. Just for the laughs, because I documented every single week. I'm already starting better. So week 1 last year, I went 2-3. So to start 4-1 this week, it's pretty good. I only had.
What'd you do in the second week?
The second week I went 3-2. So
okay.
The first time, and there were some bad ones. I had 1 week where I went 1-4.
Yeah.
And that was, I forgot what happened in week 5 last season, but I'm sure we can go back in the tape and see it. But last season I only had 3 weeks of 4-1. So yeah. I'm already a third of the way there. So It's only week 1. But I think that does wrap up this episode of the Harvey Hour. Tuesday is going to be a great show. We're going to recap some of the hottest games from Sunday, from Monday. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, my name's Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We are the co-hosts of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Hi, Grandpa.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.